So just starting to work more and more transparent will allow you to really sculpt that form. We've brought in those opaques and we've really established the values, and now we can get subtle, more and more subtle, bringing some of the lights into the dark areas and some of those darks into the light areas, checking our reference and where are those tiny little shadows falling. It's just above the lip here, there's a tiny little shadow. And then doing the same with like the brightest lights, looking at where are those brightest lights falling onto the cheekbone here. I'm using almost pure white at this point. Still don't use totally pure white, so mixing a little bit of, especially the raw sienna in, but a little bit of the burnt sienna as well. Finding those brightest whites, and that's really going to start to create that form. Just soften it in. Getting more and more subtle. Okay, so everybody's sort of along that same lines, and you might be a little bit farther ahead in some areas, and you might have already really worked on this. But just keep on looking. Just, we want to say, oh, good enough, done. But and then jump ahead to glazing. But we're not ready for that yet. We just really want to make sure that we have that form really sculpted. It's like, if you're building a piece of furniture, and you're sanding, you're like, okay, it's smooth enough, and then you bring the stain in and you stain on top of it, and then all of a sudden you can see all the spots that you were lazy and didn't sand smooth enough. Mm-hmm. It's going to be like that, because then it's harder to go back and sand on top of that stain, right? Mm-hmm. So the transparencies, when we bring in those glazes later, those colors are really hard to match. As you can tell, if you've had to do any carving in, I did here, carving in around with your original background colors, it's hard to match transparencies. Those are colors you can't mix. That's where we were talking about optic mixing, optic color mixing, whereas putting down a red, laying a yellow glaze over top is going to turn it orange. You can't mix that orange. You have to create it with transparencies. So just really being diligent, showing up, and doing that meticulous, dedicated work to make it as good as you can push it, really push it. Okay, I'm going to move to a small brush. You'll be so excited to use their tiny little brushes. I'm going to come around and do a little check and see how many people have color on their little brushes. I'm going to tickle you in your ears.
Skye, I noticed that you were actually using the small flat brush in the last thing that you were just doing. Is that what you would recommend because it kind of creates planes?
Yeah, so with that small brush, it really, you can create, it's much easier to get a smooth area because you can sort of work with the flat of it. Mm-hmm. See, sort of, it just still allows you to work a little bit more general than bringing in this tiny little brush and doing the little point on the tip of the nose at the end. It just keeps me from doing that. So working with the squares, I think, that'll help you keep it smooth. Some people, you might find that you actually like the round brushes, maybe you like the big round brush, and you're enjoying sort of doing this kind of thing. Like little circular scumbles. Try that if you're finding that you're not liking sort of the linear brush strokes. Really just explore. I show you the way that I've developed. And it's something it's ongoing, and I'm still always like, oh wow, I just learned a new brush stroke or something. Try that, see if you like it, if you're feeling funny about the linear. And, or rub it on with your paintbrush or your cloth. There's many ways, and it'll create different effects, and they can be useful at different points in the painting. So with our little brush, we're going to start to work on the eyes. I'm going to start with my super dark, just my pure umber. At this point, it doesn't totally matter if you use the raw umber or the burnt umber. I prefer the burnt umber just because it's warmer, has less gray tone to it, less sort of greenish. You can even combine them. If you ever want to make like the darkest color, like black. You'll notice there's no black out there. My high school art teacher told me in grade 9, he says, never use black in your painting, always mix your black. And actually just in this last year, I've sort of rediscovered black, and I'm like, wow, black is neat as a graphic element. So if you need to drop in like some big, bold something at some point as like, you know, thinking graphic design, you know, writing or big arrow or like a black background with a white foreground, like black can be handy, but really you can mix almost completely black by using burnt umber and phthalo blue. Those two together will make very near black, and it'll be a lot richer than a typical black. Like a black that you get out of the tube is probably made with carbon, so it's made from one single pigment, and it's black. The light absorbs into it. However, if you mix it with a phthalo blue and an umber, which you can also do variations of, you can use a deep turquoise and a burnt sienna. So something dark, rich, and warm, dark, rich, and cool will balance each other and create a very juicy black, where that color is evident. The light will go into it and reflect back at you, and it'll get really, like, it plays with the light.